Hey, welcome back to the channel. Last week, just wanted to let you know, the reason I didn't post last week is my dad was recently diagnosed with something called mantle cell lymphoma, which is actually cancer that gets in your bone marrow. And so my brother and I spent the week tearing out their bathroom and building in a walk-in shower and doing things like that for my dad, so it's easier for him to not have to navigate the bathtub and things like that. And so it was a family week, and it was, even though the situation is not completely desirable, it was nice to be in the house I grew up in and be able to put forth the effort. And it took a lot of effort, but put forth the effort to actually do something like that for my parents. So I was off doing that, and I did take a lot of photographs. I didn't get to paint, obviously, in Florida because we were working 12 to 15 hours a day, and so there wasn't any time for painting. But I did snap a bunch of photographs of some of my favorite scenes, and so I'm gonna share some of those with you pretty soon. And today, just kind of honoring my dad. I have a very fond memory of the day my dad and I spent here in the Beech Forest. I'm actually hiding from the wind in the Beech Forest. It's really windy up above the canopy here. And I remember the last time we painted here, it was in the fall, and there were actually a bunch of I think they're called snow aphids, if I'm right, on one of the beech trees down below. And I'm just surrounded by beech trees here, which is really cool. It's my favorite tree. I think maybe you've heard me say that before. And so today I'm actually set up, and I'm gonna paint kind of looking down this path. And I'll show you what I'm looking at here. Kind of looking down this path here, and I've got a sketch. This doesn't take much. Actually, it took very little. But anyway, I'm going to get set up here, and let's see what we can do. All right, cool. So I think what I'm going to have to do is I sort of need to establish this green that's along this edge of the blue up here, because it's catching the most light, because it's not underneath any of this canopy. It's actually back behind it. So I'm going to kind of start with that and try and use that as a basis for what the rest of these greens are going to look like. So that's my strategy, and yeah, hopefully that works out. All right, cool. I know sometimes you comment about how much you like to see and hear about the color mixing. So So I thought what I would do today is just take maybe a couple of opportunities just to share with you kind of exactly what I'm doing and what I'm thinking. So just so you can get a feel for it. Let's see. So I established those colors up above, and that was mostly a mixture of, as you know, I'm experimenting with the olive green. So I started out with olive green, and I brought in some cad yellow light, and then that kind of gave me that yellowish green that's up there by the sky as a nice starting point. I didn't have to do much more than just that. And then I took that green and I modified it with a little bit of ultramarine blue, and I brought that in, and that was kind of like the next group of trees, kind of right in here, which it's actually one tree, and I'll actually cut some more light into it later. So that was just ultramarine blue in that same pool of color. And then all I did was, as you get over to the right here, it starts to get more in shadow. So I just increased the ultramarine blue into that same pool, and just got a little bit darker. And I'll modify some of these as I go, and then that became kind of this color that sort of sits in front of all of that. And I have a whole kind of wash of that, and I wanted to establish the kind of the trail first before I do this wash, because I want to see how these colors relate. And so I can see there's not enough color in this white and this blue here. This is actually going to have to be more blue. Probably needs some more. Some more cerulean in the mix, and I'll work with that. I'll work with that later. But anyway, it's one of those fall clear blue skies without a lot of cloud detail and stuff. So, but there's a lot of grayish purple colors in the path here. So there's different ways I can go with the I have to determine, is it a gray that's going to be to the warm side, or is the gray that's going to be to the cool side, because that'll decide which direction I'm going to go. And it's actually a gray that's to the cool side, even though it has some warm colors that are resting on top of it. The path itself it's actually almost a sandy color up in here, and it's got a lot of white in it, and maybe just a touch of red. That touch of red went kind of crazy, so I'm going to go, since it is toward the cool side, first I'm going to try a mixture of the olive green, and I'm going to take alizarin crimson, and I'm going to mix that with it, and then I'm going to see what happens when I halftone that, and that actually comes pretty close to what I had down here, just quite a bit warmer. So I don't think that's the direction I want to go. So I'm going to back off of that one. And now I'm going to take some more of the olive green, and I'm going to grab some cad red light. I'm going to mix that with it. see what we have in a halftone there. Now hopefully you can see how warm that got. And I think I'm going to actually bring the camera a little bit closer for you so you can see this better. See that particular gray got pretty warm, but I like that gray because there are some of those colors in there, and so I think I'm going to stick with that one. But now all I have to do is grab I'm going to grab some ultramarine blue, and I'm going to cool that gray off. And now I think it's getting close to, and I'm going to put some in here as well. It's getting close to the range that I'm seeing. Like all of this that's in shadow down in here in the bottom is actually kind of this this cooler gray, and it's almost the whole path. And then when we get up on this hillside, let me wipe this off a little bit. Sorry about that. I know you. I'll show you real quick. I think if I back off here, you can see what's happening with both. So I'm going to try that. So I took that kind of cooler gray there, that's all kind of resting in there, and then actually this reddish color kind of rests along this whole edge right here, because there's a lot of like leaves and stuff in there. And then for the top part here, I think all we have to do is just have to lighten that. So I'm going to go right back where I started. I'm going to take the olive green, which is actually kind of a putty gray all by itself, but it has a lot of green in it, obviously. If I start out with the green, just a touch of whoops, I went the wrong red. So that, a little bit of blue, that gets me kind of back where I want to be, and then I can just use a lot of white in that, and that gives me what I believe to be the color that's kind of resting along this edge in the upper section here, because this kind of curves around. Off to the side here. And then there's kind of some sandy whites, which are just gonna have a touch of yellow in them, where the sun's resting there. And there's just a few of those that just kind of rest right in this area where the light's kind of bouncing through here. So that sort of establishes this whole range. And then it gets a little bit yellower the more we go in the distance here. So where there's some light bouncing kind of down in the bottom, there's just a touch of yellow down there. So and then you actually, you find a little bit of just a touch of green in here. But so I'm just doing this to get it sort of established. And I like these grays. I think they're going to work out good. So so down in here, there's a little bit on this edge here, and then there's actually a little bit of that little redder color down in there as well. Ends up going back that way, but it just sort of disappears. So all right, so hopefully that kind of shows you how I sort of think through and figure out what direction I want to go with certain colors, and now I'm going to kind of get into these greens in here, and it's mostly going to be just kind of scrubbing them in and then cutting through them with the trees, because there's very little light. There's a little bit that's bouncing through, finding its way through here. There's just a touch over here, but they're just very small areas, which I'll get at the actual very end. And then I've got kind of this whole greenish, reddish hillside here that cuts into the trail. And then we got some nice green grass growing over on this side, and that'll kind of help tell the story of what's happening. And then we got some leaves laying on the edge, and so all that. So all right, I'll keep going. All right, so thanks so much for checking out the video today. I really do appreciate it as always. And if you are not a subscriber, I invite you to hit the subscribe button and hit the bell notification right beside there so you don't miss anything. And you know, I don't think I've mentioned on my YouTube channel yet that I actually started a podcast. And if you were a person who liked my Tuesday Drive videos, that was sort of inspiration for the podcast. The podcast is called The Artist Perspective, and I will actually put a link to it down below in the description. So if you were listening to the Tuesday Drive and you were sad that I stopped doing that, I just moved it over to a podcast because it was really sort of like a podcast anyway. But so I'll put a link, you can check that out, and as always, I will catch you later.